Hello and welcome to Reroll. My name is Angus Morrison and I will be using these videos to take another look at specific issues that have been flagged up in my reviews or are particularly relevant to gaming in general. Discussion is highly encouraged. Please do like and subscribe and leave a comment agreeing, disagreeing, verbal abuse. Get angry, let's get some discourse going. In this video I'll be presenting some of my thoughts on the reboot, the recent tendency for devs great and small to knock the numbers off the end of their games and get back to basics. First though, I'd just like to say a massive thank you for the incredible response to my Tomb Raider review. That was, wow, that just came out of nowhere and it really made all the effort that went into that video worth it. So welcome to my new subscribers. Some of you left some very positive comments and some of you rightly flagged up things you thought could be improved upon. Please continue to do so and I'll be working hard on the quality of my videos based on what you have to say. And on a completely unrelated note, those of you who have played Dota 2 will know that Steam throws game keys at you like there's no tomorrow, and I currently have a whole load of them sitting in my Steam inventory. If anyone would like a Dota 2 key, just send me a message and I'll hook you up. Right, onwards. Gaming fashions are always a little peculiar. Those small motifs that the community latches onto and rides to exhaustion, at which point they never want to see it again. For an easy example, you need only look to the bows that are featured in, say, Crysis 3, Far Cry 3, Battlefield 3... Wait, I'm seeing a pattern. Most of these are inconsequential. We play with our new toys in a variety of settings before going full hipster when new games try and jump on the trend. Some of them, however, are really more important, especially so the recent desire to reboot every series that stands still long enough. I say these are more important because instead of simply adding a new trinket like a new weapon or a new kind of exploding barrel, they are taking IP that has often been built up over years with very large and particular fan bases and fundamentally, often permanently, changing it. In the past few months, Tomb Raider, DMC, SimCity and Command & Conquer have all had suffixes lopped off the end. Well, actually DMC technically still has one, but referring to it as DMC Devil May Cry is ridiculous, so I'm choosing to ignore it. Is this good? Bad? Utterly pointless? Personally, I have nothing against the concept of the series reboot. Like all things, it can be done very well or very badly, but in general these are not things that we should be treating with hostility. Because there comes a point in a long-running series when things will begin to stagnate. I mean, between games we see various quirks and gimmicks added to shake up the formula, but tonally and mechanically, the game must remain fundamentally the same to form a coherent part of the series. When this doesn't happen, we're left with jarring additions to our familiar and much-loved series that simply don't make sense. My best example here would be Dead Space 3. It certainly claims to be the third installment in the Dead Space series, but the absence of horror in favour of relentless shoot-'em-up and the added bonus of being able to buy your way out of trouble means that it is a very, very different creature from the first two games, which formed a more coherent tradition. Dead Space 3 is barely in the same genre as its predecessors. However, the paradox lies in the fact that if you consistently offer the same game with a new number on the end, your player base will stop growing. The market for people who like that precise formula will necessarily become saturated before declining to only those enthusiasts that simply cannot get enough sameness. You can neither change a series nor allow it to remain the same. And that's where the reboot comes in. It is a very powerful tool by which a developer can preserve an IP loved by thousands and bring it to a new audience without conflicting with existing convention. Most often reboots take place in completely separate universes. The events in the new thread have no bearing upon those of the former. And yes, the fanboy in me kind of hates this. I love X formula. I want more of the same. But these are urges that we must suppress for the sake of diversity and the continued growth of gaming. Because surely, it is better to see a favourite hero playing by different rules than to relegate an entire subculture to extinction. Existing worlds and characters represent an incredibly rich creative pool from which to draw. To ignore it would be to permanently write off decades of work. I should clarify that I'm not using this argument to legitimate a lack of original content. New creations should always take precedence over iterations of past work. But would you really rather see a cherished IP fade into obscurity than be repurposed for new adventures? I phrase this as a question because I very much doubt, well, I know for a fact that not everyone will agree with me. I mean, is this not the internet? To show you what I mean, we need look no further than the most controversial haircut in video game history. If you haven't seen my DMC review, well, first off, I highly recommend that you check it out, but for the lazy among you, I was thoroughly impressed. The level design was original, impressive, and highly variable. The combat, with the exception of weapon-specific enemies and monsters with invulnerability states, was incredibly fluid and handled well with both controller and keyboard and mouse. The quality of the porting was excellent. But you don't just have to take my opinion. DMC was one of those rare creatures where the press was in almost uniform agreement about its strengths and its weaknesses. Overall, reaction was overwhelmingly positive, with the highest score I found being 9.5 out of 10 from ZTGD, criticising only some clunky jumping and sporadic camera issues. This is perhaps a tad generous in light of the faults with its scoring system, but given that the lower end of the scores sit as high as 8 out of 10, it doesn't seem wildly inflated. Yet this was a game hammered, and I do mean hammered, with Metacritic scores of 3 or lower during its week of release. It's taken until now, around 2 months on, for that score to crawl its way back up to a lackluster 6.1. And that's on PC. The Xbox 360 and PS3 scores are even lower. In theory, there should be little difference between the press and the public scores, because we weren't dealing with SimCity level differences between press and release experiences. We played near identical versions. Instead, this is an example of a minority of fans becoming so incited by the suggestion of change that their angry cries succeeded in drowning out a chorus of press accolades. So what does this mean? Should we be advocating more caution with our rebooting, lest older players be put off? Should we avoid rebooting completely, so as to not disturb the eternal rest of dead series? No. And now some of you will be thinking, come on Angus, that's not how this works. You need to qualify your sweeping statements. You should be addressing the counter-arguments properly. But that's just it. From the camp of people slapping ones all over its perfectly formed levels, there is nothing that even approaches a coherent argument in support of their sentence. But you don't have to take my hyperbolic word for this, because I've pulled out a few choice examples for you to take a look at. I would normally give a balanced review, but it seems to be that professional reviewers only focus on one aspect of a game. Therefore, in an attempt to be more professional, I will do the same. And since the positive side has been highlighted plenty by sites such as IGN, I will just list all of the negative things. This is a bad game. The story is bad. The characters are unlikable. The protagonist shoots a pregnant woman in the stomach, then kills her, then later mocks the antagonist about it. I stopped playing when I saw the wig joke. The developers just gave a big "fuck you, we don't fucking care" to the original series. Okay, yes, admittedly I am quite artificially pulling out the ones that make the least sense for comic effect. Some of the motley collection of fan reviews do make the same negative comments as the press ones, but these are utterly dissonant with the score that they afford the game. For example, a scoring system that is too forgiving does not relegate a game to a 0 score. Let's be clear here, 0 is a score reserved for not a game. This is nothing but a knee-jerk medieval reaction to change. The hair is shorter, cast it into the fire! Now the point of this rather lengthy diatribe is hopefully to demonstrate that hardcore fandom makes for a very poor argument against the practice of rebooting series. Indeed, the only arguments I feel are worth their salt are those that concern a lack of original content, as I've already mentioned, and worries about rebooting for rebooting's sake. In light of recent controversy, it is not entirely difficult to imagine a publisher forcing a reboot upon an entirely functional series simply to watch the cash come rolling in. When a series is old and neglected, however, reboots are a fantastic method by which entire worlds may be brought back from the brink for new audiences to form their own bonds with, while the existing ones remain wholly intact. Gaming is building itself a rich history. Let's not forget about it.